I'm Brandon.
And I'm Jesse.
We're Cannabis School. Having cannabis-infused conversations
with everyday people,
cannabis companies,
celebrities,
and your mom.
Welcome to the Sesh.
Hey everybody, we are so excited to have you here again on the Sesh. Welcome back. We have got some amazing guests here today. So we've got Troy and Aviva from Guides Collective. We are going to get psychedelic in here. Now, you're noticing a theme. Every Thursday, it almost seems like we keep gravitating towards psychedelics.
It has been a common theme, hasn't it, recently?
Yeah, absolutely. But you got to remember, too, cannabis is a mild hallucinogenic. It helps out with that one. This is usually kind of stepping stones towards what we're going to be talking about a lot today. But by far, some of the most experts in this field, at least from we could gather, we're super excited to be able to meet you. Aviva, Troy, thank you guys so much for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolute honor, guys. This is a thrill. I've been listening to your podcast for the past week, and now I feel like I'm a fanboy. I'm gonna get autographs after this.
Whatever. You know, it was funny. I was at a dispensary in Salt Lake, and I was getting with Dragonfly. And when I was getting it, the guy's like, "Hey man, can one of the guys in the back come out and meet you? He's a big fan." I'm like, "That's sure." And the guy's like, "Oh, I'm really nervous." I'm like, "What the hell? That's weird. That's so weird." I'm like, "No, dude, we're cool." Shook his hand, gave him a little bro hug, and he was just like, "Oh man, thank you so much." I'm like, "That's weird, but okay, cool." Because I mean, it's just like what we were talking about before with psychedelics. You know, you get to this certain stage with certain psychedelics, and we are as one. That's the way I feel around with a lot of people. I think that has a lot to do with the psychedelics. What do you guys think?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What I've discovered with psychedelics is like it becomes this level of empathy. And when you get super empathetic, you do feel like one, because it's no longer like you're doing this and I'm doing this. It's more like, what's going on with you? Like even bad things. Like I got cut off today. And right, like old me would have been like, "What the fuck?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
You driving like an idiot?" And like my first thought is, "Oh man, he seems like he's in a real hurry. Like
Yeah.
I hope he gets to where he's going. Like he might get fired from his job or something, right?" And like that empathetic feeling that you get inherently from psychedelics, like once it sticks with you, it's like, oh,
It's way different, 'cause
we're all connected.
Jesse knows me behind the wheel. I'm usually like a very
Yeah,
chill, mellow person. And then you put me behind the wheel and I get so annoyed with everyone.
Yeah, his demon comes out.
And it's like, so when there's times that like that piece is actually with me and I'm like, oh, no, it's fine. Like I'm no longer in a like, I need to be here. I need to go do this. It's like, no, this is just where I'm at. Like I'm okay. This is where I'm at. This is where I need to be. I don't need to be racing somewhere else. Like, and just chilling. And it's like, oh, it's such a different experience doing that. But to go from, like you said, the frustration and like all of that to like, man, hope he gets there okay. Man, he seems like he's in a rush.
Yeah, what a mind switch, right? And
Yeah.
man, once that triggers in your mind, like the world just gets a lot.
Do you think
Easier.
psychedelics has been that biggest, like the switch?
I would say so. Yeah, I think psychedelics really was that trigger for me that just, I mean, the way that I would describe it is, you go to therapy and you talk about things and you know what you should be doing and you know what you should be doing better. But with psychedelics, it gives you more of like an inherent feeling of what you should be doing. Like a prime example for me is like, oftentimes I was drinking too much, right? Like it wasn't a
Yeah.
problem. Like it wasn't like I'm not going to jail and beat my
No,
kids or anything.
It's
But
just
like,
not the healthiest
yeah.
lifestyle.
And I was like, I think I'm probably drinking too much. And then during like a mushroom ceremony, I pictured myself on my deathbed from just like not taking care of myself and my family looking at me and being like, why didn't you take care of yourself? You died early.
Yeah.
And man, that feeling was really what would like got me going and be like, I have to take care of myself better, because it was more than just like a thought in the back of your head. It was real. It was in you. And like with
Yeah.
psychedelics, that's kind of how I look at it, is just like, you live this pretty normal, mundane life, right? And you don't have these like dare to be great situations. But on psychedelics, everything is amplified. Everything is bigger, right? So like even like, you can be hiking and jump over a river and you're like, I'm crossing like the
Massive accomplishment here.
yeah, yeah. And so like you have these like almost dare to be great situation, like these times that you are fighting demons and fighting dragons and it feels so much more
Magical.
intense that
Yeah.
like it sticks with you, right? Like it lasts longer. You feel it more.
That's interesting.
It
Aviva,
can.
you've been using psychedelics for, I mean, chronologically for quite a while. Would that be a fair
A
assumption?
few decades,
A few
yeah.
decades. You have such an interesting past. I'm interested. I mean, Troy's going through this transformation that he saw, like almost dipping his mind into the future. Did you have a
Mm.
similar experience?
Yes and no, right? So like I absolutely am obviously a huge proponent of the power of psychedelics, but I also don't think it's the right solution for everybody all the time. So there's like a lot of media around how great, you're going to take mushrooms once and your whole life is going to transform, or you're going to have this intense experience and go deep the way you guys are talking about, right? Like have this totally unifying opening experience where you realize that you're all part of humanity and you're all one. And that can happen, but it's by no means a guarantee or like necessarily a key. The thing is, like, we talk about psychedelics being non-specific amplifiers, which effectively means that whoever we already are, it makes us more of. So if you're like a really egotistical asshole and you're like involved with psychedelics, you're just going to be a more egotistical asshole. So it's like it leverages, like it puts itself into who you are and amplifies that. And that's why, to me, it's not a standalone experience. It's an experience that I think is necessary to have with perspective, with guidance, with potentially mindfulness or yoga or breath work or therapy or guidance or whatever it looks like, so that you're actually making the effective changes you want to be making. The thing about psychedelics is it actually changes your neuronal pathways. So it makes you more receptive to change. It makes you more capable of sort of suspending your own judgment and your own feelings about, your normal knee-jerk responses. And it opens up a space between, right, how I feel and how I act. And in that space, we can change how we act and potentially even change how we feel. But like, where do we want to go with that? If there's nobody really guiding us towards, or even ourselves, but if we don't have a clear sense of what we want to accomplish from this, then you've had a great, cool experience, but you may not have had a transformative experience, is
Yeah,
my opinion.
I like how you said that. Like if you're an asshole and you use it, you're just going to be a bigger asshole. And you kind of thinking about like, historically when the Vikings used to go berserker, they would use psychedelics. And that just makes it, I mean, you're not going to be I mean, these guys are going around cutting people in half while they're on mushrooms. So, I mean,
That sounds nuts.
yeah,
Like I
because they would
can't even
take,
It's
imagine
not
that.
recommended.
Nope.
they would be like, I mean, could you imagine the visuals,
Dude, I watched the
the
UFC
PTSD
fight
you would have after that?
once. Like walked into the bar with a buddy on like not a microdose, but like a gram and a half probably. And I started watching the fight and it was horrible. It was the worst experience and I actually blacked out as I was trying to walk out of the bar. And I was like, it was just so much, so horrible. Like just watching all the people rooting and cheering for people, like beating the shit out of each other and watching the blood on their hands and their faces. And I was like, this wasn't humans, it was animals. And I was like, to watch that, it was hard. And I was like, I need to get outside. And I started walking and I just like blacked out, fell on the ground. And my buddy, I wake up with this bartender over me and I look over and then my friend's there. And I was like, where are we? And he's like, at the bar. And I'm like, okay, let's go outside. And then we went outside and then I came to and I was like, all right, we should probably not be here. We should probably go. And he was like, yeah, cool. All right. So we hopped in the car. He drove because he was sober. And we went home. But that experience, and I'm like, so Vikings and other people like doing that on I can't even imagine.
Well, but that it goes to say, I mean, it's an extension of you, right? So it's you're being able to put that energy out even further. And when
Yeah.
you introduce light to light, you get that good experience. When you introduce darkness to darkness, that's where you get like that. That makes sense too, because of, yeah, you may have this great experience. I remember like friends in high school would eat mushrooms and they would just giggle and laugh. And every experience I've had on psilocybin has always been like this super positive, very open, but because I had the intent. And so again, it goes back to that, right? By being guided, and that's kind of like this huge thing of what when we met you guys, this was on just a fluke. I was at a dinner party and met this guy just joking around with him. He's like, "You got to meet Troy." And then I meet Troy and then I meet Aviva and I'm just like, this is kick ass. This is so perfect. It's like, it's just on this journey where I've been. I mean, a lot of it is, you know, I'm keeping this super valuable to my psyche and to the growth of my soul. I believe that this is helping so much. And so hearing about that, especially what you had brought up, because social media has this, I mean, there are mushroom gummies now that you can get on there and it's like, yeah, okay. But
I saw they sell them at the coffee shop here down the street.
yeah,
They sell mushroom
Uh,
gummies all the time. I'm like, what in the world?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the challenge that this next generation is going to have. I work for a company called Third Wave, which is like a psychedelic education company, but Third Wave is, we had the first wave, which was essentially natives doing it for, cultural reasons as a family. Then we had the second wave, which was like the 70s,
The
and it's like,
hippies.
hey, take
Yeah.
this, it's called acid. What's going to happen? I don't know. How much should I take?
I don't
I don't
know.
know. Let's go to a
Yeah.
concert, right? And now we're here at the third wave, which is really like using these things as powerful tools, powerful medicine. But the more access there is to it, the better chance we have of fucking it up. Because truthfully, like I think the biggest thing with psychedelics, and even on the last podcast where you were talking about psychedelics with someone, it's like, hey, let take mushrooms, it'll change your life, right? But how much are you supposed to take? Is mushrooms right for you? There's LSD, there's DMT, there's 5-MeO DMT, there's all of these things, and they all work different. And like just saying, okay, I heard psychedelics are good. I'm gonna pop these mushrooms and see if I'm all of a sudden a happy person. That oftentimes, one, can be very dangerous, and
Yeah.
two, usually isn't going to work, right? Like if
And
you're
it's
not talking about the set and
dosing.
setting and the preparation.
Yes. That's huge. Like set and setting is massive and it can shift at any moment.
Yeah.
Like if some new energy or person or thing comes into that, it can change your entire setting.
Yeah.
And so it can take you from being in a safe, peaceful, okay setting to going to a dark, not okay space. And it's like I've had that happen as well because it was like we had a nice safe setting set, all of that, and then someone else came into it that wasn't there. And it brought in this energy, and we had to all separate, go to our own spaces after we removed that energy and we're like, you have to leave. We can't have you here. Everyone else went to our own space, and then we came back within 10, 15 minutes because we were like, yeah, we're okay. Everything's okay now. Like that energy was gone, but it's massive and that will stick with you. And there's so much unknown for someone to just go, hey, take a mushroom or take a psychedelic and jump right into it.
Yeah.
Like that massively, it can give you a beneficial experience, or it could end up giving you this horrible experience that pushes you away from any type of beneficial therapeutic things that you could gain from that,
Yeah,
you know?
it's like playing the lottery, right? Like
Yes.
it's funny, the first time I did conscious psychedelics in ceremony, you have your eye mask on, you listen to the music, and I took my eye mask off when it was done, and the first thing I said is, "Holy shit, I've been doing drugs wrong this entire time." Because before it was like, "Hey, let's take some mushrooms and go to a concert."
Yeah.
But like in a setting like that, one, music is already great and a concert's already great. Like it's a good time already. So you're not really introspective. It makes the concert better, yes, but you're not really thinking about your own
No,
inner child,
not
nothing
at
like
all.
that. And to your point, what if there's a fist fight right next to you, right?
Yeah.
And then
Oh, yeah.
how does that affect you? So now it's very much like I only do psychedelics in very certain places with very certain people, and
Yeah.
oftentimes usually just by myself now.
I agree. I think by myself has been some of the most, for me, that's been the most beneficial. Like I've worked through a lot of my demons, a lot of my struggles, a lot of my own like shit. Me being an asshole, like all of this stuff, it's me looking at it and going like realizing so much, but it doesn't come, like you said, it doesn't come from being out at a party, out at a concert. It's from those moments, like the perfect set and setting where you're meditating, you're doing these things, and you're looking at this like broken inner child and going, "Hey, you're okay. Like, let me hug you. You're okay." And then you break down and you start bawling and that, and you're like, but those are like some of the most profound experiences
Yeah.
that we have when we allow that to happen.
Yeah.
Aviva,
I actually have, sorry, go ahead.
no, no, I was going to ask you a question. Please go.
So I actually have like a bit of I guess qualification or comment on like this whole
I would
conversation you
love to
just
hear.
had. Like starting off with, let's talk about set and setting, right? So for
Yeah.
anyone who doesn't know, set refers to your mindset, right? How you're coming into the experience, what your belief systems are, how, right? Like how you're feeling. And setting refers to what's going on around you. So like you were talking about, like, is somebody going to walk into the room and totally upset the energetic balance? Or are you in a place that you feel safe? Or are you at a concert? Or are you alone? So that's what we're talking about. And yeah, it's obviously hugely critical. But right, like one of the things you said around it's the difference between having like a really positive experience and going into a place that's really negative. There's like, yes, obviously you could have an experience on psychedelics that feels traumatizing or threatening. And I actually have a friend who, when she was much younger, took too much LSD and it ended up, it like probably caused some form of psychotic break. She was not good for a long time. So these are serious molecules that you have to be really careful about. But if you're physiologically safe and that isn't like you aren't having that kind of tip over, then a bad trip isn't always a bad trip. It goes back to, right, like, are we in a place where we we are just looking at our own demons, where we are in a spot of we're like delving into the parts of ourselves, our shadow that we haven't looked at, and that we're allowing it to arise and then we're allowing it to release. And if we can do that, then these molecules become like an incredibly powerful force for fueling our own change and our own growth and our own maturity, really. And for mindfulness, for being able to really see ourselves and be conscious of who we are in a moment by moment place, which is what allows us to do what Troy was talking about, right? Be in traffic and being able to have like compassion for somebody because we're not all about ourselves. We can be all about other people too.
Yeah, I like how you say that. It's almost like it's a cleansing over there. Kind of like where I don't know, it's like the film that's on the top. You're able
Mhm.
to kind of scrape that away, but it also just kind of like the concept of oil pulling is what I'm pulled to with psychedelics, where you're able to extract this toxic. It pulls it up. That's why I feel the same way. If someone's having a bad experience on a trip where it's terrifying, it's something that the mind is trying to bring back up, going, no, we need to get this out. We need to get this out. And that's that cleansing feeling, like I felt on psilocybin, on ketamine, like something is gone. I'm glad it's gone. I don't know what it is, but I don't want it back. And it definitely starts to pull it out. And it sounds like from your experience with so many different people, that's the case, but also the cautionary, right?
Yeah.
This isn't to be played with, because I was talking to a guy recently and I was like, well, how much do you take when you take psilocybin? I mean, do you weigh it out? Do you know what kind of grams you're taking? He goes, no. My friends and I in college would get like a bag of it, and then we go, here's an even amount for you, here's an even amount for me, and nobody knows that the weight could have been totally different. And you're just like, oh, exactly what you said. I take this.
But it goes, but it goes back to like if we're emotionally capacitated and we've grown up relatively safe and we've got an ability to self-process and we're self-reflective and mature, then if we're having a difficult experience, we may be able to negotiate it and navigate it on our own. but not everybody has that grounding, as we all know. And people come from a lot of trauma, and even if it's what we call small t trauma instead of big T trauma, that's not like that doesn't make it easiher. Which
Yeah.
is why, like, not everybody's capable of doing this on their own. People do sometimes
No.
need a sitter or a guide or somebody who's going to, or a therapist, somebody who, like, post experience can work with them and help them tease out what happened and figure out what it means, which is what we call integration, which means, like, you've had this experience now, where are we going to put it inside our body to make sure we're walking away with an understanding of what happened. Integration to me is like there's pieces of us that are missing. And I think of it sort of as puzzle pieces. And as we integrate, like, we're putting those pieces back into place. We're literally becoming more whole. And that's what ultimately integration allows us to do. It allows us to take those isolated experiences and plug up the places in us that we believe have gaps, even though we don't have gaps, but we believe they do. Integration makes us wholer.
That's trippy.
Yeah. So Aviva, in your like decades of experience through here, I'm guessing you didn't start as a guide.
No, I don't even formally act as a guide, although I do so informally. Um, but no, I landed in here inside of conscious community accidentally. I have a friend who was a rock star actually back in the 80s and was during the time exposed to all kinds of different drugs, including MDMA. And she had an experience and thought it was so fantastic that she wanted to bring it to her mother. So she ended up organizing a family, what she called a camp, a family experience where she and her mom just sat together with MDMA and allowed the heart opening properties of it to integrate and heal their own relationship. And that was so awesome that they ended up bringing in her siblings. And then the mother was so impressed by the outcomes that she constituted her own group of women and started quarterly getting together with these women to have MDMA experiences where they would spend a whole day. It was like a whole Saturday kind of thing. And then Sunday would be integration, where they would just have themed experiences. They would dance, they would dress up pretty, they would talk about really difficult stuff. They would talk about child raising, whatever it was. And those happened quarterly for years, like probably 15 years, until some of these women's children were old enough to be brought into the group. And it became like a sort of shift of like, how do we make this a next generation experience? They started bringing in their daughters, and their daughters were like, I want to invite my friends. So it just kept growing organically. Today, it's a group of probably about 120 women and men in a bunch of different locations around the world, obviously who don't get together simultaneously, but who are considered part of this kind of group of getting together and having these experiences. So that's the context in which I've learned to guide and facilitate.
Side note, that's fucking weird. I don't know what that thumb
I
is.
think if I do that, yeah, I don't know how that
I know,
happened.
it's like,
I'm trying
it's
to do it.
reminding
Wasn't me.
Troy to give a thumbs up. You're like, remember, this is the part of the story where you give a thumbs up. This is what you need to do.
Hey, we got one.
You're like,
Hey,
oh, there we go. Oh, no.
Every time you say something smart, Aviva, we're getting
Yeah,
something.
Ooh.
there's that AI technology
Trying
in
to
there
the bog,
goes,
actually.
she's on it. She knows. No, that is so, I'm still like, I've never had that explained to me, but I'm seeing those gaps like puzzle pieces right now. Maybe it's the
Yeah.
cannabis. What are we smoking? Super lemon
Super Lemon G.
So
Mhm.
that's very nice. But he's like, when you were doing that, I felt that going in, and I'm thinking about that during those psychedelic experiences because there's this bit of apprehension that I feel still, even when I take a microdose, because I think it's because I've developed so much respect for the plant that I'm just like, don't abuse this. Use this for when you need this, but don't use this like, oh, I feel like getting something to eat. Let's go to Wendy's, right?
Oh.
That's a bad choice.
Yeah.
That's a bad choice, right? We still make it, but it's still a bad choice. And when you think holistically, like creating this homeostasis within your life, like you just don't want to just be like, oh, it's Tuesday. Wow.
Yep.
You really
Yeah.
want to be intentional on that one. And I think that's part of that intention is once you become more acclimated to it and having a guide is so important now because you brought it up. I mean, we've got women's publications talking about microdose for 30 days and change your life. Like, okay, but we don't know what their body, it's like everybody's endocannabinoid system is completely different from the next. We don't know how it's going to be from A to B to C.
Or their mental state or whether medications they're on or anything else, and to say, hey, just take it and go off and do your own thing, it's really tough. It's
Best of luck.
Yeah, like it's the same with cannabis. I feel like the experience should always be guided. Your first experience should be with someone who, whether it's a therapist, a guide, someone who understands and knows and can like help walk you through that to make you feel safe. Where did Guides Collective, like what was that starting point? Like what made you guys think, hey, we need to help these guides, these people who are trying to guide others through this?
Yeah, so I can go first. We kind of
Yeah,
it's
do
it's
it.
funny because we hit it from two different angles, and then we came together, and I was like, Aviva, here's what I'm thinking, and she's like, this is what I'm thinking too. But we got there in two different ways, right? So for me, I very much have my own personal relationships with psychedelics, and I have been guided. But I have very much like an imposter syndrome, where like, who am I to be a guide, right? Like I didn't go through
Hmm.
training. I'm not a guide. So as I was going through life, and my journey's relatively new in terms of conscious psychedelics, so I'm probably about 5 years in, but I would go to people and be like, "Oh my God, psychedelics have changed my life. They're absolutely incredible. Everyone should go do them." And they would be like, "Okay, well, can you help me?" And I'd be like, "No." Like, who can? I was like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I genuinely don't know, but you should really go find that person and
There's
go
got
get
to be
help
someone. Yeah.
somewhere.
Reddit? I don't
Yeah.
know.
So for me, Guides Collective, we have this new thing to help people find a guide is really that starting point for people because everyone's listening to these conversations of psychedelics is good, psychedelics is good, psychedelics is good, but where do you go? Right? And
And
so
how do
what
you
we
do it? And how do you do it safely?
and what should you be doing,
Yeah.
right? Like even right now, the best answer would be like go to a place like Retreat Guru. And it has all of these, they're verified and they have all these different retreats, but it's like a 3-day ayahuasca ceremony, a 6-day psilocybin ceremony, a microdosing course, and you don't even have enough information to really
Know what to do there.
know where to
Yeah.
start, right? So there's no starting point. Like when you go to a doctor, I got a thyroid issue, right? And like I went to a doctor and I was like, this is kind of weird. There's a bump here. And that guy was like, oh, you have a bump here. This could be a couple things. I'm going to send you to an expert and that expert will figure it out for you, right? And so like you had a starting point. They sent me somewhere who was the expert based on what I actually needed. And then that expert got me to where I needed to go. That doesn't exist in psychedelics. So what we built was this place where we found the best guides in the world, right? Like we have a network of 500 guides, but it's a starting point where you speak with us specifically for 30 minutes. You tell us what you're going through, what you're feeling, what medications you're on, all of those things. And then we link you up with the person that we think is right for you specifically. Like, for example, if you have a traumatic, like a really traumatic experience in your childhood. A lot of times MDMA is a good starting point over mushrooms because MDMA is a little bit more empathetic, right? Like where you can start having those feelings and start having those cries before you're having visuals and too much is going on and you're
Yeah.
not really processing things, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of people, they could have severe sexual trauma and take a hero dose of mushrooms. And
Yeah.
again,
Just make it
if
worse.
if
Oh,
there
horrible.
is no such thing as a bad trip, and you
Oh,
might freak out and it might be good for you. However, that probably wasn't the best starting point for you. It could have been better. It could have been easier. You could
But
have
you
had
could
someone work you
still
through.
gain immense value from that if you can find a way to integrate what you've learned or, the experience through that. Even though, like you said, there's not really a bad trip. I've had horrible moments within a trip or really hard moments that have really like kind of torn me to pieces, but then I've seen, hey, I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of a teaching moment in that moment to show me an experience that's going to happen, a moment that's going to happen, and then it's like, but you're still okay.
Yeah.
And through those, like I found these things, and it's like cathartic in those moments. But that moment when I'm sitting there in it, and I'm like feeling like I'm falling apart, and I'm bawling, and like in that moment, I experienced my kids moving across the country. I watched in that moment my kids leave, and me feeling the pain of my kids leaving, and me not seeing them for who knows how long.
Yeah.
And that was a reality that was happening. It just hadn't happened yet.
Mm.
And I was beyond terrified of it happening. And when it happened, like that mushroom trip was hard. It
Yeah.
was hard. But that's because the real life experience was hard.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I knew in that moment, I was like, no, I'll be okay. And in that was still to this day is one of the most beautiful experiences that I've gone through. Hard, but like that trip was eye-opening and mind-opening and going like, I never would have gone through that. Like I never could have experienced that in my own reality without that psychedelic like hand.
Yeah. And ideally, what do you do after that? You appreciate your time with your kids 10 times more because you know the feeling of when they're going to leave.
Yeah.
And so ideally you come back and be the best dad you can be in those moments, right?
Yeah. Be present in those moments.
Yeah.
When they bring such an emphasis on why there should be more guided experiences, is we're seeing this culture shift where psychedelics becomes the end-all be-all cure, and cannabis has gone through that multiple times. People are like, "Oh, it's great for everything. Like, I got eczema. You just smoke this, and the eczema goes away." Just
Spray some Windex on it.
yeah, yeah. No, dude, it's like everybody's like, "Oh yeah," like when I first got into cannabis, like, "Oh, it'll help with diabetes because I have type 2 diabetes," and I go, "Yeah, okay." You show me something that goes behind it. Like I'm just gonna trust it going, no, honey, I'm keeping the diabetes away. I'm smoking all day long. I just keep my bong attached to me with like a utility belt. Right? I pull it
For
out.
the diabetes.
Yeah, it's for the betis. I'm in line over there
For
at
the
Walmart.
betis.
Somebody's like, hey, and I'm like, it's for the
Medical,
betis. And
medical.
they're like, oh, okay. But
My
it's
betus is acting up.
yeah, my betis, I gotta start smoking again. You just smoked 10 feet before. You're like, no, I gotta do it
And now
again.
you're so high, you're eating 10 cookies.
Yeah, I know.
Don't worry. I smoked first.
Kids,
That-
you see, I got a flare up. Leave me alone.
Walmart should start having high guides. They just pick out the guys with really red eyes and kind of slow gait, and they go, "Come with me, sir," and they just have a perfect snack aisle.
They need a high aisle. That's
Yeah.
what they
Yeah.
need.
They just go in there,
High
they're
aisle.
like-
we know everything you want.
Yeah, as soon as you come in, they go, a voice goes over there going, aisle 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Slinkies and Doritos in the same place. All right.
That was the thing I was thinking about when you were talking about these places that do these psychedelic retreats, and they're like ayahuasca Monday, psilocybin Tuesday. It's just like, why don't they just have like an announcement if you were at like a restaurant and the restaurant goes, okay, you eat something all at the same time, and they go, by the way, that food can cause severe cramping, diarrhea, and vomiting. Best of luck. And you're just like, okay, what did I just get into? Because that's the feeling that you have when you take it, going, there's no going back.
Yeah.
There's no going back. But it shouldn't feel that way.
Yeah.
You should be prepped.
Although, that's so interesting. It shouldn't. I want to think about that comment because I think that we probably should have a bit of trepidation before approaching psychedelics, no matter how experienced we might be. This every single trip has the potential to quite literally change the way you think and feel. I mean, we all know the whole Burning Man storyline of like, the prohibitions after you've attended, right? Don't quit your job, don't sell your house, don't get divorced, because the impulse when you've had this kind of experience is, I've seen the light, I know the truth, I am God, I can make all these changes. And I mean, sure, like it definitely feels like we've gained a bigger truth, but then real life is going to come back. Real life is still going to come back. And so how do we navigate these kind of like big moments in that real life context? So like, should we feel totally comfortable approaching this? Or should we be a little concerned and respectful of the lineage that this comes from, of the right of the potential power of what it's going to do to us emotionally, psychologically. Uh, I think a little fear is probably good.
It sounds like you still have that after decades and decades and decades.
I so that's so interesting. I lost it for a little bit. I was afraid for a really long time. And I was afraid. I'm not panicked, but I would have that moment of like, okay, here we go, right? Don't know what's going
Nervous
to happen. And then
anxiousness
you
of,
jump.
yep.
I lost that fear for a short little period about a year ago. And I was just like, yeah, whatever. I've taken all kinds of psychedelics. I can take all kinds of psychedelics. They're not addictive. It's not a big deal. It doesn't do much for your body. And I ended up like with real medical problems that the doctors couldn't figure out what was going on, and that I still don't have like a firm diagnosis because, I only reveal so much, but it looks like it was probably like some kind of um what's that syndrome called, Troy? Do you remember? Uh it's like when there's too much serotonin syndrome, where there's too much
Ooh,
serotonin in your body and it messes up your like capacity to function.
interesting.
So yeah, now I'm afraid again. Not actively, not enough to stop me, but enough to be really respectful.
One of the best ways that I've heard it put and that I use now is like psychedelics are a skill that you can get better at. Like, let's look at it as like karate, right? If you're going to join karate, you're not just going to be like, all right, I'm going to get into a fight and see what happens, right? Like, you have a sensei first, right? And like, you get trained and you get taught what to do. When they do this, you do this. When they do this, you do this, right? And like, in that starting journey of psychedelics, it really makes a lot of sense to have that sensei. So when I started doing guided psychedelics, right? Like if something would get scary, I learned breath work, right? Because someone's like, no, no, do box breathing, watch what happens. And then all of a sudden I was like, ooh, I just left my body for a minute. That was great. And
From box breathing?
yeah, while on psychedelics. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, but just
Whoa,
30 minutes of box breathing and I was just left my body. My
interesting.
stomach was a little uncomfortable from the mushrooms and they were like,
Yeah.
keep breathing in this way and you won't notice your body anymore. And I was like, oh, I left my meat bag. Like, I'm
That's
gone.
wild.
Yeah, it was very interesting. But I keep
Huh.
learning these new things in psychedelics, right? And like the way that I look at it is it's an onion that you continue to peel back. So a lot of times your first psychedelic experience could go very bad because that's the first layer of the onion, right? That's the first piece where you're dealing with that childhood trauma, where you're dealing with those surface level emotions that are fundamentally inside of you that you've been bottling up and now are about to come out. So that's where you really want to be guided, right? But
Yeah.
after doing, I don't know, 20, 30 guided ceremonies, like then I felt equipped. About 2 months ago, I had probably the most profound psychedelic experience of my life. I did 8 grams of mushrooms completely by myself, because I felt equipped so that I could handle anything that would come up. And it was so profound. It was so crazy because I shed all the layers of Troy that is a dad, a business owner, this, that. You have all,
Wow.
and the older you get and you have kids, like the more those layers are on and you forget who
Yeah.
you were. And the best way I can describe it is I fell in love with myself again. Like I took myself on the best 4 hour date I've ever had with myself, completely alone, and I felt equipped to handle it. But that shouldn't have been my first psychedelic
Oh
experience,
no,
right?
no.
Like that could have gone
Eight
very,
grams
very
on your
bad.
own, like,
That's a
yeah,
huge
that's a
dosage. So
heroic, yeah,
Yeah.
massive heroic dose.
Yeah, so like the starting point, the feeling comfortable starting with low doses and working your way up and dealing with some of those traumatic things. Because like the first level for me, it's like the trauma, the identity, but then it goes a little deeper into like the meaning of life, the source, right? And then it goes a little bit deeper. And each layer gets a little bit more profound. But I mean, that's why they call it the work,
But you
is
have to
because,
work through all the other trauma and like bullshit that we have that we carry
yeah,
in order to get to that.
yeah. And
Yeah.
that's the hard part. And that's where we really believe in guided, safe, take the right stuff at the right time, preparation, integration, all of that stuff. So that's really what our mission has been is basically really understanding who the human is and then pointing them in a direction that we feel is the best to work with, the best in class to handle whatever it is you're looking to get out of, a psychedelic regimen or a psychedelic experience.
So you're like the general practitioner that they go to go, hey, who's the specialist?
Yep.
Where do I go to go
That's
find what's
closest
going to
to
help
me.
me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
really understanding on a deeper level that 30 minutes, I mean, you can gain so much from someone. If they can be honest in those 30 minutes about their life, their struggles, like who they are, maybe what they're taking, what they're doing, like that can be massively beneficial in that experience and really aligning them with someone. Like you said, some people have certain traumas that really are catered to almost specific types of therapies or types of personalities and that to work with. That it's
Yep.
like you will gain the most value from this type of person.
Yep. Yeah. That's been our mission for a long time now. My biggest thing is I find that the people who probably need psychedelics the most are the people that are the most adverse to them. And this is the same thing with cannabis, is like you had the image of the pothead,
Yeah.
right? Like, oh wait, I'm gonna smoke that. I know who smokes that. Those guys in the basement that
Yep.
don't do anything and they live in their parents' house, right? And that was this initial stigma. And like right now with psychedelics, it's like, oh, that's for like those people in leather vests that slackline and live in Thailand and like I'll
Right.
do them and I'll want to quit my job and nothing will matter anymore. And like it's really like the soccer moms who are living, their mundane lives,
Oh,
who
yeah.
just need to remember their spark, their inner joy,
Remember who they are.
these
'Cause you
businessmen who just 9 to
lose the
5,
sense
they
of who
go,
you
they
are.
go. And
Yeah.
and that's what we want to bring, is like psychedelics to the masses where everybody feels comfortable doing it. Like my avatar, I grew up Mormon as well. My avatar is my sister and my mom. If I could do MDMA with my sister and my mom, like
Yeah.
because they now feel like it's been normalized enough, oh my God, that would just
That'd be
be.
amazing. Yeah.
Could you imagine doing
Yeah,
MDMA
it's the
with
same
them?
thing with like I think about that with my parents. Even like I've thought about it, like, man, how cool would it be to consume cannabis or do like a microdose with my parents or, MDMA. Like what would those experiences and those conversations, and honestly, it sucks because I had a conversation with my dad about this yesterday, because one of my cousins, we talked about it like a couple weeks ago, and she's going through therapy and she's like, it's interesting. I honestly don't feel like anyone in that side actually loves each other. Like I don't feel like, and that side of our family is 160 plus people.
Wow.
We're massive.
Wow.
From my grandparents down, like
Mormons multiply like amoeba.
yeah, we are Mormons through and through. It's like, hey, can we pop out how many kids? Like, let's do it.
Yeah,
So
I've got
Only
5
10?
kids.
Rookie.
yeah, what
I
are
have a small family. in
those
Utah.
are
We have
rookie
5.
numbers.
If I was rolling through California,
Do
they'd
you
be
even
like,
Mormon,
"Oh."
bro?
Yeah, right. That's
Even
exactly
Mormon.
right. So, but I look at that and I'm like, I would love to do those types of things with them, and looking at that and going, yeah, realizing most of my family has no idea what love is. Like they don't love themselves, they don't love each other. So looking at that and going, how much of them could be healed in the right setting, like if they had someone to guide them, walk them through this, how many of these broken children would come out going, hey, oh my God, like I am so much more than I thought I was.
Yeah.
And then they treat other people so much more because they see them differently.
Yeah.
And like you said, it becomes the like we, not an us and a them, or like each of us as individuals. That's like a we. You see their struggles, you feel their struggles, and you're there for them for those struggles because you're not judging them. It's no longer this like, oh, well, I'm better than you or this. It's like, no, you're human. I'm human. We're human. Like, we're all going through this human experience together.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's incredibly shitty and hard. And other times it's incredibly beautiful.
Yeah.
But you can't experience that beautiful without the shitty and the hard. But it's like we wear so many layers of this ego, of this struggle of life that we carry. And it's like, how many rocks are in our backpack that we're carrying?
Yeah.
You know?
One of the greatest things that I've ever done for my marriage is, as I started going down this path, me and my wife started a tradition where we'll get a hotel room every 3 months to 6 months, and we'll do a little bit of MDMA and we'll do a little bit of mushrooms, and we will talk. And like the last experience that we had, when my son was really little, she looked at me and she's like, I have two boys, right? And one was 3 and one was 1. And she looked at me and she said, "You need to hold Skylar more." And like, if she would have told me that on a random Tuesday,
Yeah.
I'd be like, I'm a great fucking dad.
Yeah,
Like,
like
do you
I
see all the
hold
things
him all
I'm
the
doing?
time
Do
or
you see,
whatever.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
you
just
don't
would
even
have
think
gotten
about it. Yeah.
very defensive. And, when she said it in that moment, I was like, you know what? You're right, because I feel like because you are the mother and this is a baby, your responsibility is to this baby while I'm taking care of the 3-year-old who no longer needs you as much anymore. And I was able to analyze why I was doing it, what I could be doing better. And instead of a fight, it's this super profound moment that, like, the very next day, it's like, I got Skylar, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I'll feed him. Like, because I fundamentally understood where she was coming from and was able to shed my ego enough to be like, oh, you're right, and here are the reasons you are right.
Yeah.
And here's what I was thinking when I was doing that.
Because our ego gets in that way, and it's like, what was their tone? What was this? And it's
Yeah.
like half of the time we take it way out of context and blow things way out of proportion. In something simple like that could have been like, turns into like, I'm holding him enough. Like, you don't think I'm a good dad?
Yeah.
And you're like, versus just sitting and realizing where she's coming from, what she was trying to convey, and going, oh man, seeing more of the picture and going, yeah, I could do that. And that's what you integrate into your life. You go, okay, cool. Yeah, this is what I'm going to pull from this.
Yeah.
I think about like the layers, peeling off, but I'm also got this like idea of rendering the fat, right? So if you've got the fat back on something like pork or something like that, you want to render that fat because then you get to the really tasty part. And that's, the tasty part of life is being able to get these layers. We become so calcified. And so, we develop these calluses that just keep building over our emotions and our life.
Because of pain, right?
Yeah, but not just, I mean, we were protecting ourselves, but it's okay to be strong from that. It's okay to have those calluses, but to know that there's something soft inside. And I think we build it up so much that we don't allow ourselves to do that. So by being able to have such a service as what you guys are providing here, by being able to find the right guide that's going to be for your right situation and for what you're going through currently, that's immense, especially now where it's becoming so popularized. It's getting to the point where it's going to be like in talks like CBD. Like, I don't want to go to 7-Eleven and get my dose.
Yeah.
Like, that's
Dose of
not a good
MDMA.
idea.
Well,
Well,
get my MDMA
I'll take
slushy.
Skittles and some MDMA. Please.
yeah, I'll take the blue flavor, and I will take the red flavor. And they're like, okay, like, I don't even know what
I
flavor
want
it is.
Mountain Dew, Baja Blast,
No,
MDMA
it's
Slurpee.
gotta be
and-
it's got to be like NyQuil. Like, NyQuil is the only medicine out there that tastes like red or green. Because there's no other way to describe it. It's just like, oh, this tastes like
It does taste like
right,
red.
right? So you just fall asleep. But I wanted to ask you, Viva, since you've been the most experienced psychonaut, I have been thinking about this for a bit, only because of Frank Herbert's Dune. So there is a mushroom expert. What's his name? Is it McKenna? Terrence
no,
McKenna's
Not
brother?
Terrence McKenna. It's the guy who wears the massive hat.
He
The
wears a
massive
hat and
mushroom
glasses,
hat.
has the
Oh
big
my
beard.
gosh.
Stamos?
James Fadiman?
Yeah. No,
Stamos.
Stamos.
Yeah.
Paul Stamets.
Paul Stamos.
right.
Yeah.
That's who
Paul
it is.
Sorry,
Stamets,
Aviva.
yeah.
They're,
Yes.
they're getting me high, so.
That's okay.
Which is always a mistake with Troy, but
Yeah,
No
talk about-
way.
talk about psychedelics as a skill. You guys are a black belt. I'm a yellow belt in weeds.
Oh, don't worry, man. Never go too far, man. We're very responsible for that.
You
Like,
guys are my guides. So.
yeah, no. You should probably cut yourself off. But in Frank
Yes.
Herbert's Dune, the guy was reading it back then, and he knew Frank Herbert, and he came to him, and they were talking about the blue juice of life, and he said, "That's psilocybin tea." He goes, "You created that. The spice is from psilocybin." He goes, "You're the only one who got that."
Yeah, he's like, you're the first person who's ever noticed that.
Yeah, and it was
That's
just like,
super funny.
so
shit.
psilocybin tea. I know that it can turn blue, but how's the experience compared to just eating the plant?
compared to just eating
Like
it?
eating it,
Tea
yeah.
versus like,
Okay, so the issue with eating mushrooms is that it takes time to metabolize, so that it's not going to hit your body, and like Troy was saying earlier, it's probably going to mess with your stomach. You're gonna feel nauseous. It's not and it doesn't taste that great. If
What?
you
It's delicious. Stop telling
for
these
some
people lies.
people, if you grind it up, you can use a cannabis grinder. If you grind it up, you stick it in a tea bag or a tea holder. You steep it for like a half an hour. You can add honey. You can add sugar. You can do what you want. Some people add lemon. It's called lemon teching, which makes it
Yeah.
even stronger. It's going to hit your body faster.
I've
You can
heard that
steep
helps
it,
with the
and it
nausea though.
metabolizes much more quickly.
Yeah, it does. Like I thought she was getting to that. You're not nauseous on it as much.
With the lemon
You
juice.
may
Yeah.
feel some nausea, again, depending on the quantity that you've taken and your dosage and your comfort level, and if you're used to feeling this in your body or not.
Yeah.
But no, chances are you're going to navigate it a lot more smoothly, and you feel the come on more softly. So it becomes something that you can lean into
Ooh.
differently than if you're just chewing the stuff.
The only way I do mushrooms now is lemon teching. Like the difference it's done on my stomach.
Yeah.
So basically the way that it works is like the lemon kind of pre-digests the stuff that your
The
stomach
acidity
was
in it
going
breaks
to
it
have
down?
to digest. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not the psilocybin itself, but it's everything else that's in the mushrooms. Like it kind of does the work
like
of
how
your
the
stomach.
microorganisms
Yeah.
interact with your gut biome or something,
Yeah.
and that acid
In
from the
advance.
lemon juice.
In
just-
advance. Yeah. It's
That's
been
cool.
once I did it once, I was like, this is the only way I'm ever going to take
I had
mushrooms ever
heard
again.
that before, and I told a friend to try that because she was like, "Oh, every time I'd use mushrooms, I'm just nauseous or I throw up." And I was like, "Well, I heard lemon juice works, but it might make it work like more potent, so just be careful. But try that next time." And I get a video message from my buddy and his girlfriend, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, it's amazing! I don't feel sick at all." And I was like, "Well, I'm glad it worked for you. Like I've not tried that yet."
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I've been really interested because I mean, you imagine having a picture of that in your fridge.
Daddy, what's
Huh.
that blue juice over here? Can I have some of the blue juice?
No, no.
No, you're not talking to God today.
Yeah,
Sorry.
seriously.
I don't
You know-
know. Like I personally have had psychedelic experiences with my children who are adults, but it's I don't mind giving them the blue juice. Like it's an actual honor to
As an
watch my
adult,
children
I think that would be
navigate this
amazing,
kind of
though,
thing.
to have
It's
that type of connected experience with them because I've done it with like a handful of close friends now and then. Like here and there, I've done psychedelics with a few. And I think in certain circles with the setting and the people, like that's okay. And when my kids get old enough to the point that they're adults, I would love to have that experience with my children.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
MDMA, psilocybin, like those, because I know I've never been the perfect parent and how much that they
I'm glad he
probably
admitted
still.
it. 'Cause
It's the first
he,
step.
he
Always.
keeps doing that. He
Good
sends me like
point.
memes like I'm better than you, and then he'll like send pictures of me
Honestly,
doing stuff with his kids. He's
it
like,
was
"Where are
religion.
you bastard?"
Religion is what did it because I was like this concept of God, this like perfect father. And then I looked at it and I was like, if he's the perfect father, I'm nowhere near a perfect father. And if he's
Damn
the
straight.
and I was like, and if he's the perfect father, and I'm like, this story that I've been told makes no sense. No. And I was like, I cannot wrap this in my mind that this is true.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's a load of shit. And so since then, that like concept of that, because I'm like, and now I look at it and I feel like I am way more introspective about how I am with my kids. I am always the first one to go, I am sorry. I yelled, I snapped, like, I am sorry. My parents never apologize. We talked about it. His parents didn't either. It was like, this is how you were raised. You got like smacked. You got like, you were put in your place. You did what you were told, and like, it's just how shit was.
Yeah.
And so now I'm like looking at it going, yeah, no, I'm not raising my children that way. And still looking at it going like how many times that I just, because of how I was raised, that it's a reaction and going, I'm sorry I reacted. I was not paying attention. I was frustrated. All this was going on and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like I'm still working on being a parent and like work with this through me because if there's things that you're like, Dad, like tell me because I know I'm not perfect and I'm the first one to go, hey, I fucked up. Like I'm sorry.
Yeah, he says it a
That's a
lot.
lot.
That's one of the best parenting things you can do. I think a lot of children get fucked up is when they think their their parent figures are the end all be all, right?
The
And
perfect.
yeah, and they
Yeah.
know exactly what to do and exactly when to do it. And when I don't do it, I get yelled at and they know everything. And then those people like they don't realize until they have kids, like, oh, my parents are just a bunch of idiots trying the best that they could. Why didn't they tell me that earlier?
Yeah.
Like the earlier that you can look at your child and relate one to one as human rather than parent to kid
Yeah.
is
Like
very
so many times
profound.
they come to me, Dad, do you know this? No, actually I don't. Let's go find this out together.
Yeah.
Because I don't have to know everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm older. Yeah, I've been around longer, but I'm not the end all be all. I'm not God. I'm not whatever you want to think of that is I'm Brandon.
Yeah.
I'm this guy who's figuring life out as he goes, and I'm still figuring life out. I have no idea. And as new data and information come along, I go, oh shoot, look, I was incorrect. I learned something new today.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah, I mean, this is reminding me of a book I recently listened to on near-death experiences. There was a guy, he was on Sean Ryan's podcast, and it was awesome. I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this, and I smoked a lot of cannabis while I listened to this book. And that idea of thinking about a perfect, I'm not perfect, and a lot of religions across the board, they had this idea of you need to be perfect and you're not worthy enough. You're not good enough. You'll never be there. And a lot of people feel that like within, in Utah, the predominant faith of the LDS church, that's what's the idea that people get. But when I listened to this book, it took all these near-death experiences over 30 years and the commonalities they found in it. And the closest thing what they were talking about is the same feeling that I have on psilocybin, which was absolute acceptance, absolute love. And that's what every single person talked about in those near-death experiences, where we envision whatever the greater entity, whatever you want to call them, whatever is, it's nothing but light and love.
yeah,
There's no judgment, there's no anger, there's only like the way they described it was the most intense love you've ever felt in your life. And I feel that we get to touch that when we use psychedelics just for a moment.
in the right way.
Imagine if that was
Yeah.
all the time, ever expanding. I mean, that'd be crazy. Somebody's like, "Look, dude, if you take mushrooms, your love's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger if you go in with the right intent, the right person to guide you. Like you just have the happiest people walking around.
Yeah.
Like
you
I
do.
feel nicer. Like Brandon's rode with me. I am the most passive driver ever. Oh, you go ahead, sir. Somebody over there getting real angry. I'm like, hey, take care. And
And
they're
it's hitting your horn for
yeah,
you.
I never hit my horn. I rarely hit my horn. Even if I'm at a stoplight and the guy's over there dinking around on his phone going,
Who messaged me?
Jesse's like, he'll finish the text
Yeah,
soon.
I'm
I'm
like,
like, fuck him out.
yeah, I'm like, I'll wait like for like 5, 10 seconds. I'm like, all right, yeah, meh, just a little bip. And they go, oh, because I feel that. I'm just like, oh, I'm so sorry. And allowing people to get in line at the grocery store, they just got that look on their face saying, hey, you need this more than I do. It just puts you in this sense of, and I say this too to a lot of people, I think it puts you in this Christ-like sense where you're just like, I'm going to be loving, I'm going to be caring, I care about all of you. All of you are important. That's where, I mean, Brandon bringing me into, cannabis, I mean, like, I started telling him, like, early on when we started really hanging out, I'm like, hey, man, I love you. And it was like a light went off on him. He goes, I love you too, man. Every day we talk, which can be multiple times a day. Every time we get off the phone, he's like, hey, I love you, bro. Love you too. And I've spread that to other people. And now I have people, like I just met this new guy yesterday and we're talking, it's all business stuff. And I just say, man, I love you. And he's like, I love you too. Like, he was so excited. And I feel that's the same way with psilocybin, like where people need to be in that environment. You can't get love in 7-Eleven out of a bag that's sealed by the counter that's in raspberry. You just can't. You
But
need,
cherry.
well,
Yep.
shit,
And
now you
grape.
changed everything. I was just like, you know what? If it's, if it's that, you're like, but if it's cherry, like, shit. Hands come off like Kobe Bryant's in there in the Staples Arena, right? Just, you're like, I'm ready to play ball. Like, no, it definitely, you need that. You really need that guidance, a sage, if you will, somebody that can really help you through that process and allow that stigma to fall off of you. And that's what I love about these communities. It's not like you're going to run into each other at the supermarket locally going, I know what you do on Saturdays. Like it's just a community. You just know each other. It's like Brandon and I joke around about it with potheads. Like if you go anywhere in the world and don't even speak the language and somebody is smoking some chiba, you go, hmm? And they go, oh, yeah, yeah. They'll share it with you. And all of a sudden, you're friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like with psilocybin. If somebody knows you do it, they go, oh. They welcome you like what Christians believe how they'll be welcome when they come into church.
Yeah. Come on in.
Hey, what's up?
Oh, so good to see you. How you
Yeah.
doing? Love you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
We have this I do this med circle like once a month where we take psilocybin. But like after doing it a few times, I was like, man, I think this is what church was trying to do.
Yeah.
Right.
I like we support
Mhm.
each other. We talk about what everyone's going through. There's genuine love. Everybody wants the next person to just be a little bit better, and you could feel it. And like I grew up going to Mormon church, and I was very bored. Right? Like I
I
get
got
what
the
they were
mark of the
trying to
beast
do.
every
I
week.
I
Yep.
get the feeling they were trying to invoke, but I've just found for me this much more real way of doing it that
Yeah.
now has become my more or less my religion.
I've never done psilocybin and gone to church, but I've definitely thought about it. And I think that would be an amazing experience because I'm usually I have cannabis in my system when I go because I'm like, look, people are going to say things that are going to be pretty ignorant. But that's okay. You need to let that go. I'm like, all right. So I go and they'll say something, and then normally I'd be like, that was dumb. Like now I'm just like, oh, well, I wonder why that experience has his attention. That's all I think now.
Oh, but
Like,
it is, it comes down to compassion and right, if we're
yes.
capable of opening our hearts up. And going back to what I was saying before, I don't know that psychedelics are the be all and end all for that. But if it's done intentionally, if it's proper, like if it's indicated for you and your body, if you're capable of doing this, and if you're emotionally and psychologically whole enough to experience this, and you don't have to be whole, you just have to be whole enough, then absolutely. Like, can it tap you into a deeper level of love, a consciousness of divinity, a sense of belonging?
Oh, and
Absolutely.
self-love. Like
Yeah.
previous to psychedelics, I know I had no self-love. There was mirror work that I did and an experience, and in that moment, like just seeing myself in the mirror, I was bawling and I talked to myself and I was like, in that moment, I was judging myself, but then I saw who I was and I found that love and I was like, this is horrible. How have I not loved myself at all? And to see that and like to feel that difference, to find a love for yourself can reflect so much more outwardly when you find that. So again, like you said, if you're whole enough and you're in a good enough spot, you can find one that works well with you. You can go through and find that for yourself and
Yeah.
work through these things and come out as a more of you because
Yeah.
those pieces that you think are missing that your just perception is they're missing, so they're missing. And so
And
you're just allowing that to come back.
the more we do it too, right, the better we become at self-regulating, at self-healing, at seeing
Yeah.
our own beauty. We get to reflect that outwards. And that rubs off. That rubs off on the people we work with who we can say we love. It rubs off on our parents and our children. It rubs off on the drivers that we don't swear at, even though they don't know. Like it rubs off on the people in the line in front of us. It has the capacity to make the world maybe a little bit kinder, which I think we all need.
Yeah, definitely. And I love what you said earlier too, and thank you for sharing that, there was a time where you it didn't make you nervous anymore and you just took it a lot more. And it reminds me of this one guy that I knew. He's around here. He was involved with the business, doing really well, got really into ayahuasca. And he was one of those guys like it's better if it's in the jungle. And he was going down so much that he had a psychotic break,
Yep.
and he came back, and I worked 10 years in psych. So you have the ability to see other people through different lens because you know it so well. It's not like, oh no, this, 2024 schizophrenia, so much more different than early 2000s schizophrenia. No, across the board it's been the same. And the way that he was acting was mildly schizophrenic, and I
Yeah.
felt so bad where it's you fly too close to the sun
Yep.
and you're gonna get burned.
I have a friend going through that right now. Like I was at an ayahuasca ceremony and someone said something really interesting about, talking about preparation and integration. It's like some people are looking for altered traits and some people are looking for altered states. Which one are you looking for? But I had a buddy who got into psychedelics at like 40. Everything he did, he went to the extreme, right? So it was just like, oh, you took 4 grams of mushrooms? I could take 12.
Push
Oh,
it
you
to
you
the
only do it
limit.
once every 3 months? I'm gonna do it every day for the next 2 weeks. Oh, you did this much
Oh,
ayahuasca? I'm gonna have more. And it's like you're missing the point and you are starting to lose your minds. Like
It's
it's
not a
that's not
race. Yeah.
that's
yeah.
not what you're
No.
missing the entire point of
Oh
what
yeah.
this is for, and that's why again, you should be working with someone who can help you. And if you are that kind of person, also remind you like
Well,
you're missing the point.
a lot. Because like you said, your very first thing where you're like, oh, I realized I was doing drugs all wrong.
Yeah.
Because when you use, there's a difference between like doing them recreationally
Yeah.
or socially and then using it with like an actual experience. You use way less too. The
Yep.
medicine that you actually use is tons less. And so you're like, the experience you get is way better, can be way more impactful, and you're using like a portion
Yeah.
of what you would otherwise. And it's like, again, it's like setting, dosing. Like there's so much that goes into everything for that. It's
The epiphany I'm having right now is like when you hear about like when you're taking it, it's what's the oh damn it, damn marijuana, it left.
got it.
No, but
God.
I had something there. Damn it, it was actually pretty good. It was good. Now it's gone. It's
No.
gone.
It'll come
Shit.
back. I have a good
Shit.
feeling about it.
No, oh, yep, it's gone. You know what? It probably wasn't meant to be anyways. It was
That's
just
okay.
like, no, Jesse, that's way too meta. Stop being a pretentious dickhead.
Hold on, we're gonna do a recap. Let's get you back here. We talked about doing way too much. Then we talked about the reasons for doing it and the setting and what your intentions were. And then you were about to say
Oh
something.
yeah, with the guy going over there talking about like I got to do more than you. I got to do more than this one. Nobody's going to do that with calcium and with magnesium calcium. Like no one's going to take like I'm going to drink the entire bottle. And not only that, but the insides of my colon are going to look like a brushed steel because it's going to clean me out.
It's gonna
Yeah.
be beautiful.
And that's the thing, like when you're doing that, just like, whoa, what? Like I still hold myself. I have a moderate tolerance. Yeah, that's what I don't want to think of as tolerance because a tolerance is being able to accept a poison into your body and still not feel the effects.
Yeah.
So I want to be able to elevate myself based on this certain dosage because this is all I need, right? I mean, dude, pizza's delicious, but you don't need to eat the entire pie.
Yep.
You can have one or two slices
Yep.
and just be happy.
Yep.
Well, maybe that's the intent behind it is, when
To
you
be a
weigh out
gluttonous
specifically your dose, it's, I've got this intent. So it's a microdose. It's this small of a dose. It's 1 gram,
Yeah.
but how often do you have the intent that you're taking an 8 gram trip?
Yeah.
So
That was
Yeah,
just once.
That's a planned event.
Yeah.
so maybe that intent has, but it depends on the person. There's like you've said, so many people just, hey, well, I'm going to eat a handful of mushrooms. I'm just going to take this mushroom. Do you even know how much it was?
Yeah.
Like there's so much that can go into it. And you're like, well, was it a third of a gram? Was it a gram and a half? Like what was the dose that
Well,
you
and what
just
strain was it? And right,
exactly.
how did you consume it? And like all of that matters, and people don't know. So I agree. But it goes back to what I was saying before around non-specific amplifiers, because if you're a really competitive personality that has to prove that what you're doing is better than what other people are doing, you're going to fall into that kind of trap without the proper preparation that, oh, here I am. I've got to prove that I'm better at psychedelics as well. Right? Like,
Yeah.
so like, and to Troy's point, it is true. I mean, it's not ultimately, those are the habits that we're trying to break, not trying to solidify. And if we're not careful, we could find ourselves solidifying the habits we don't want to be solidifying,
Yeah.
becoming more of, more rigid or more judgmental or more competitive. So yeah,
What I
pretty
found kind of
opposite.
ironic about psychedelics is the more I've done them, the less I need them and the less often. Like
Which is what I say all the
now
time.
I
The
call it
more I do, the less I do.
like a refresher. Like I've had these profound realizations in my life that now I know inherently.
Yeah.
And I just need a reminder every once in a while. Like
Yeah.
that's all it is. I just need a top off to just remember like, oh, you know that thing that you fundamentally know now? Like like a prime example of when I was telling about the 5-MeO DMT, like I had this realization that I needed to take better care of myself on a trip a long time ago. And the 5-MeO DMT was just like, hey, remember that. Like don't forget that thing that you
Yeah.
inherently knew before. And it was like, oh, thanks. Like, good. I'm good for the next,
Thanks, hire me.
yeah, I'm good for the next year or 6 months or
Yeah.
whatever it quote unquote calls you back. But
Yeah.
like, I don't, it's not like I crave it. I know when I just need to remember again, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Because you
Yeah.
feel it, and it's like, oh yeah, I should probably check back in with the mushrooms.
Yeah, I need a little reminder.
Yeah, it's the least competitive thing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's funny, people saying, "Oh, I can do more psychedelics than you can." It's like, that's psych flexing. I mean, cool, I guess. Like that's neat.
My ego's more dead than your ego.
I drink more water. I drink more water than yours. I don't even have
My
a
ego's
soul.
on the cross.
Look at my eyes. There's no
It's been
light
hanging there
here.
for a week.
Completely black.
Well, that once I remember a friend saying something like, oh man, I took all this LSD and like my third eye opened and like I was in touch with God and like I just need to take more. And my son, my youngest, says like, well, if his third eye's open, where else is he gonna go? Like, isn't he done?
Yeah.
And at some point, you have to start asking, why? Why am I doing this?
That's like drinking a whole bottle of laxative right there again. And my butthole opened up and
Feel
my whole
anus, yeah.
insides fell out.
Aviva,
See
that
if you
reminds
could
me of
eat
the
off
story
it.
when we were in Denver at the MAPS conference, and we were at that bar, and the guy was like, "Yeah, I'm writing a book. I've done LSD every day, living in my van, and I want to do it for 365 days." And he was just saying it from this, this kind of noble place. And Aviva just looks at him and goes, "Why the fuck would you do that?"
Yeah.
and like he genuinely didn't have like he was thrown because most people were like, "Oh, that's incredible. You must be so enlightened," and he really didn't have an answer.
Yeah, because who asks you that? It's always like, oh, we don't want to go. That's fucking weird. Why?
That's
Why?
awesome.
Yeah.
Do
I
you
love
not
that
think
you
about
said
your
that.
mental health?
That
That's-
reminds me of like that scene in Good Will Hunting where the guy's trying to be, super smart, and she's Matt Damon going over there going, "Fuck you," You like apples? How do you like them apples? She's just like, that's so stupid. Like, why would you do that?
And it's also like it comes back to safety too. Like what we started Guides Collective, the challenge that we're going to have in this next generation of psychedelic use is a lot of people like that do it a few times and they're like, oh, I got it all figured out. It's time for me to give it to other people. And like that's fundamentally dangerous, right? So like the guides that we have on our network, it's you go through a serious screening process. We talk to the people that you've worked with. It's what school did you go to? How long have you been doing it? How many ceremonies have you run? Are they in groups? Are they by themselves? What medicines do you focus on? What's the education you had behind that medicine? We make sure of all those things because again, you can go out and have a good trip and say, wow, that was fun. I want to give it to someone. That person has severe trauma that they didn't talk about. And all of a sudden you're both on mushrooms and someone is freaking out and nobody knows what to do, right?
Yeah.
And that's how this whole movement goes backwards again. So that's why we really just want to focus on getting the right people to the right people that can help and
Yeah.
do the right medicines and in the right doses and in the right setting. And yeah, it's been our focus, our mission.
I love this. So we are able to find, so you guys have a website, everything. We'll put that down into the show notes. We don't have to go over all of that. What's the one thing that you would tell our audience of being, I mean, we've talked about everything kind of really in depth, but I want to be broad here, just kind of like a mental flashcard for somebody. What's something that I need to look out for and not trust in somebody who says, let me guide you through your experience?
So I don't think there's just one thing. You want to make sure that any guide you're looking for is properly vetted. Just because they've had a pause, like they have people that they've worked with well in the past, doesn't mean that they're going to continue or maintain an ethical standard. So you want to make, like, I recommend speak to other people that they've worked with, but you might also want to make sure that there's like a criminal background check, and you want to make sure that they adhere to certain ethical standards, and that they have a certain amount of training, and that they have a certain amount of experience, and that they understand, contraindications and medical knowledge, or that they have access at least to somebody with medical knowledge. Ask them what their protocol or practice would be if there's an emergency, right? Like the same like we go for a second opinion when we're given a diagnosis because we want to make sure that this is accurate. This is equally as important. Ask more than one person, speak to several people, ask a lot of questions. And there isn't a dumb question. If you're not comfortable, trust yourself.
The other thing, like their intake process matters a lot. So if someone just goes, sure, I'll give you mushrooms, let's do it. That's a problem. Like an intake should be robust. They should speak to you for an hour. They should ask you what medications you're on. They should want to know what you're trying to get out of it. They should give you like 2 weeks of preparation, tell you what your diet should be. Like there should be just a lot more in that intake process. And the more robust that is, the better feeling you should have with it.
That gives a sense of comfort because my mind goes to, I mean, my ADHD brain just skipping all over the place, but I laugh because I thought of this one old episode of The Simpsons where the whole family goes to Duff Gardens, right? Amusement park that has flowing beer everywhere. That's awesome. That place would stink.
So gross.
But Lisa falls into the river and they pull her out and she's hallucinating. And there's this guy, and he's got a lab coat on, and he goes, okay, she'll be fine. Just give her these, and then all of these. And it's like a handful, just a giant thing of pills. And she goes, oh, thank you, doctor. And he goes, oh, I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
And it was just like, that's how you should. I mean, that's like, again, that's like going to the doctor's office, and he's like, hey, turn around. I have to put my finger in your ass because I got to check something out. And you're like, okay. And then
You're like, wait,
and then he
isn't
comes over
this
there
a
and he goes,
dentist?
all right, doctor will be in to see you in a little bit. Who's that guy? Get out of here. Like, I don't know what's going on.
You didn't realize you were at the dentist the whole
Know
time?
what's going on.
Right? It's like a Saturday Night Live skit where they keep telling this guy to cough. They go, "Ugh." And then this other lady comes in. He goes, here, what do you think? She goes, turn your head and cough. She goes, again. And the other guy comes in. He goes, hey, man, you got to come check this out. Go ahead, hold it over there. And he coughs. And then they all hold it in unison. And he's coughing. And then this guy comes in. He goes, hey, what the hell are you guys doing in here? And they're all, get out of here. It's up. And then they were like, that guy's the real doctor who came in. It's just like, that's the way I'm thinking about it. Like,
Yeah.
would you trust somebody just because they give the perception that they know what they're talking about, that they know what they're doing? I think the safety part is extremely important because when we're looking at this from a broad scope, from so many people being accepting and seeing this now in mainstream, I mean, in Utah, it was just legalized for medical use. And so we'll see this start to materialize. And it'll be interesting to see because there's so many people that are looking for answers. They go to Western medicine, they go to diet and try to make these changes, but it all starts in the gray, right? I mean, it's, every other organ we have in our body, science pretty much knows what it does, but the brain, they have ideas of what it does, but we truly have no idea it's so complex and so crazy. It's just when you're using something to be able to help or to experience, right? Either it's conscious, what was it? It was a state or a
Altered states or
Or
altered
altered traits.
traits.
yeah, altered states, altered traits. Like thinking about that and having a guy being able to work with you on that. Like, what are you seeking? What is it that you would want? Like, I want to experience an altered state. Okay, why?
Yeah.
Instead of going, cool,
Right.
Yeah.
blast off.
It was kind of interesting because even when we started this business, like my my business before this, like I'm an internet marketer, right?
Mm.
So like even building the website, like, okay, everything needs to be easy and seamless and the least amount of questions, the better, like thinking of like how to sell a toaster, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And like in making this, like if you work with us, you're gonna fill out a long form that takes a little bit of time. If you're a guide that wants to work with us, it's a pain in the ass. Like it's a lot of work. And when I stepped back and got out of my internet marketing mind, I'm like, no, this is what we want. Like this isn't supposed to be easy. Like it's supposed to be done right.
With intent.
Yeah, with intent. And that's really what we want to focus on is just
Yeah, you don't want that
seamless.
impulse buy. Like I know being an internet marketer for years too. It's just, yeah, that's the goal.
Yeah.
Like less amount of words, use the most potent psychological tactics you can to
Right.
be able to influence them, to make them feel the FOMO. Like this isn't a FOMO thing. It's not like everybody's like, hey, you, yeah, you look like you have problems. Come here, come
Yeah.
inside. All right, eat these and sit over there.
Yeah.
Don't worry, just look at the ceiling. We've painted it in swirly colors. You're like, I don't know if I should be doing this. Of course you should. That guy has a lab coat over there.
Just turn your head and cough. You're
Exactly.
fine.
All
Turn your
right.
head and cough.
Well, it's like what we talked about before. Like one of the funniest things we have with this podcast is like I literally said to people, I'm like, I get out of things and I go, and they'll go, hey, you can't do that. I'm like, that's okay. I have a podcast, and they go,
Oh, okay.
okay. So I mean, it just shows that people are it's not gullible. They just are so quick to trust authority.
Yep.
So if you're gonna have some of the authority, going, wait a minute, like recently, okay, like I'm in the coaching world and Jay Shetty, there's a huge thing out on Jay Shetty,
Yeah.
which is funny because people have been saying about this for years. And he takes other people's inspirational quotes and then puts it as he said it,
Doesn't
right?
even change a word of
No,
it
he
either.
could have written the Ten Commandments, put it on a tweet, and then said Jay Shetty. And he'd be like, oh, well, I have been fooled for years. Who wrote this nonsense? It was this guy here, clearly the British man with blue eyes, and he looks Indian. And he's a monk, supposedly. But it doesn't matter. Like, that's something you should check because even though somebody could have the best intentions, have a skill set, if you will, they still should be considered more taking this on a, dare I say, a professional level because these people are looking for that. They don't want to have this, like one experience I heard of this guy. I mean, he said it was a very beautiful experience, but I could only imagine it'd be weird. I think he's like a CPA and he was very LDS and he was growing it in his office. And then one day he just locked his door and did 5 grams and he stripped himself naked, got underneath a blanket, and stayed there for the next 4 hours. And he was like, and he went through a lot of childhood trauma in that time and came out just like, oh, and his biggest fear, it wasn't even the childhood trauma. I can't tell my wife, I can't tell my kids. They would think so low of me. And it's just like you said with your sister and your mom, you're like, oh, we could be connected so much more and you would understand.
Yeah.
You would understand. And that's that allure to
Yeah.
it. It's this mirage that's in the far distance. You're going, okay, well, yeah, maybe I could touch it, but that sounds scary.
Yeah.
It materializes, it becomes real.
Yeah.
This is awesome. This has been great.
It's been fantastic. Yeah, thanks for
Um,
coming on the show, you guys.
It was
Tons
the
of
pleasure was
fun.
all ours, guys. The second I met you, Jesse, I was like, oh, I love him. I love him. We shall be friends.
yes.
So yeah, it was awesome coming out here.
Well, and we appreciate you guys coming out. We'll make sure to put all the links over there. If you are looking to try psychedelics. If you're interested in what psychedelics can do for you, if you're looking for a guide, you guys go down there, click on the link to be able to get in touch with these amazing individuals. And who knows, maybe your next psychedelic journey will be the best you've ever experienced. Brandon, parting words?
Guys, everyone at home, Patreon supporters, we love you guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. As always, see you next week.